So this will be the end of section 1.3, and it's not anything new. It's combining factoring out greatest common factors along with the factoring strategies that we just learned. So each of the problems between 59 and 74, I'm either going to factor out a -1 if there isn't a common factor and the first term is negative, or I'm going to factor out a common factor. And then I'm going to 2 parentheses factor what's left if I can. So in problem 60, there isn't a common factor, but the first term has a negative. I'm going to factor out a -1. And then I'm going to flip the sign. The negative y squared is going to go to positive y squared. The negative y is going to go to positive y. The positive 30 is going to go to -30. Now, I'm going to ignore this -1, and I'm going to try to break into 2 parentheses the y squared plus y minus 30 that I have in that parentheses. And there is the third row of my template. So I need a plus and a minus, big number plus, small number minus. So I'm going to need the plus minus numbers that multiply to -30, that add, but that adding is really subtracting to 1, which is a number that's implied in front of that y. And my choices for 30 are 1 and 30, 15 and 2, 3 and 10, and 6 and 5. So big number plus, it could be 30 and -1, 15 and -2, 10 and -3, 6 and -5, because all of those multiply out to be -30. I need to find the pair that really subtract, but technically add to the 1, and that's going to be this pair, because 6 plus -5, which is really 6 minus 5, is going to be 1, because 6 plus -5 is going to be 1. So in one of my parentheses, I'm going to get a plus 6 after the y, and another one I'm going to get a -1. I'm sorry, a -5, because I have a 5 there, not a 1. So my answer should be -1, or just the negative sign, times in either order a y plus 6 and a y minus 5. These are clunky to check. Because multiplication is commutative, I can do the multiplication in any order. To check this, I'm going to do this multiplication first, and then I'm going to multiply by the -1. So I'm going to leave the -1 out front, and I'm going to do the multiplication. I'm going to go y times y, which is y squared. I should have the 1 here. Y times -5 is -5y. 6 times y is positive 6y. 6 times -5 is -30. I'm going to combine those terms, and -5 plus 6 gives me a positive 1. So this is going to give me -1 times y squared plus 1y minus 30. Now I'm going to multiply by -1. And multiplying by -1 is just finding the opposite, so I'm just going to flip the signs. The opposite of positive y squared is negative y squared. The opposite of positive 1y is negative 1y. I don't need to write the 1, but I can. The opposite of -30 is positive 30. I look at this, and that's exactly the original problem, so I know I'm correct. Don't have to check these, but I can, but the checking is just more work. 62, same strategy. I don't really see a common factor because all terms don't have a b, and there's a coefficient of 1. Lead coefficient is -1. I'm going to factor out a -1. Flip the sign on the b squared, make it positive. Flip the sign on the 14b, make it negative. Flip the sign on the 33, make it positive. Now I'm going to figure out how to break that parentheses into 2 parentheses. Looking for the factors of 33. 33 is 1 and 33 and 3 and 11. This is a minus plus, so I need double minus. So I need numbers that multiply to 33, that add to -14, and they're double negative. So -1 times -33 multiplies to 33. -3 times -11 multiplies to positive 33. Those are double negative. I needed double negative for this level of the template. And I plucked these numbers off from here, made them double negative. Now I'm going to add these. I'll do -1 plus -33. So -1 plus -33, that's going to be -34. And then I'll do -3 plus -11. -3 plus -11 gives me -14. That's going to be the pair I need. So I'm going to leave the -1 out front, and I'm going to create two parentheses for my single parentheses, lead it with a couple of B's, follow them up with a -3 and a -11. That's an acceptable answer. I could suppress the 1 and just write a negative in front of my parentheses and follow it by, in either order, a B-3 and a B-11. Those are just two variations of the right answer. Let's do 63 together just to knock off one of your homework problems. For 63, there's a common factor of 3 that I'm going to factor out first. I'm going to divide each of the numbers by 3. 3x squared divided by 3, the 3's will cancel and leave me an x squared. 12x divided by 3, the 12 divided by 3 will give me a 4, it will leave me an x. 36 divided by 3 is 12, I'm going to leave the minus sign. That's the first step. Now I'm going to try to break that one parentheses into two parentheses. That's this level of my template. I need plus minus numbers, big number plus small number minus. So I'm looking for numbers now that multiply to -12, that add, but that's really subtract, to +4. So the numbers that multiply to -12, big number plus small number minus, 12 times -1 multiplies to -12. 6 times -2 multiplies to -12. 4 times -3 multiplies to -12. Now I'll add these, but it's really subtracting. 12 plus -1 is really 12 minus 1, which is 11. 6 plus -2 is really 6 minus 2, which is 4. 4 plus -3 is really 4 minus 3, which is 1. So the pair I'm going to need are the +6 and the -2. So I'm going to write 3 and then x plus 6 and x minus 2. I could do the minus first and the plus second. If I want to, I can check. And when I'm checking these, when you have the parentheses and the common factor, first I multiply out the parentheses, then I distribute the common factor through. So to check, I'm done because this is the answer. But if I want to check, I can. I'm going to go x times x, get x squared, x times -2 and get -2x, 6 times x and get plus 6x, 6 times -2 and get -12. Now the -2x plus 6x will combine to be a 4x. I'm starting to get hard to see again. So this is going to be 3, and then I'll get times x squared. Those combine to be 4x, and this stays a -12. And now I'm going to clear the parentheses. I'm going to go 3 times x squared. I'm going to do 3 times 4x and 3 times -12. 3 times x squared is 3x squared. 3 times 4x is +12x. 3 times -12 is -36. I compare that to the original problem. It's an exact match, so I know my answer is correct. You can do 65, I'll do 66. In problem 66, there's a common factor of a 4. I'm going to factor it out, divide each of the numbers by 4. First term, I divide the 4 by 4 and get a 1. I'll leave the x squared. Second term, I'll do 40 divided by 4 and get a 10. Leave the x. Third term, 44 divided by 4 is 11. Now I'm going to try to break into two parentheses. The single parentheses, leading it off with a couple of x's. That's plus and minus, so I need plus and minus, big number gets the plus. I'm looking for numbers that multiply to -11, really subtract. This is why I put my adds in quotes, and if another day I might just say subtract. So the numbers that multiply to 11, big number plus, small number minus, are 11 and -1. Let me add those. That's 11 plus negative 1. That's really the same as 11 minus 1. Those multiply to negative 11, and that's 11 minus 1, which is 10. So the numbers of positive 11 and negative 1 are the numbers that belong in my parentheses. And the common factor I usually always write first, although I guess you can write it, second or third. It would look weird to me. But the parentheses can flip-flop. So that's perfect for 66. 65 should work similarly. In problem 67, maybe we can do that together. Maybe pause the video, try 67, then I'll do it for you. In problem 67, there's a common factor of an x. I'm going to take an x away from each term. The first term had 3 x's. I factored out an x. I'm left with 2. The middle term had a 6 and 2 x's. I took 1 x away, so I'm left with a 6 and an x. The last term had a 7 and an x. I'm left with the minus 7. For my factoring, this is a plus minus big number plus. So the numbers need to multiply to negative 7. I would really say subtract to 6 because that's what I think. Big number plus, small number minus. So 7 times negative 1 is my only choice. And 7 plus negative 1 is really 7 minus 1, which is 6. Those work fine to split my parentheses. One parentheses gets a 7, the other gets a negative 1. Notice I haven't reverted to the grouping. That's too inefficient for this kind of problem. Although some students, once they latch onto a method, they won't let it go. And the grouping's going to come back in the next section, and we really won't be able to avoid it that nicely. Both of those are good answers for 67. For 69 and 70, I have to factor out a negative because the first term is negative. I'm going to do 70. Each number is divisible by 2. I'll factor out a 2. Each term has a y. The smallest exponent is y to the first. So I'm going to factor out a negative 2y. I'm going to change the negative sign to positive, divide the 2 by 2 and get 1. I started with 3 x's. I took away 1. I'm going to be left with 2 x's, or 2 y's. This negative sign is going to flip to positive because I factored out a negative. This 10 I'll divide by that 2 and get a 5. I had 2 y's. I took 1 y away. I'm going to be left with 1 y. I factored out a negative, so that plus is going to flip to a minus. I'll take 48 and divide it by 2 and get 24. And then I took the y away. So now for an answer, I'm going to create a couple parentheses. I'm going to lead them with a couple of y's. And then I need to figure out what numbers I need. This row of my template, I need plus and minus, big sign plus. So my choices for the minus 24, they need to multiply to minus 24. And I'm just going to say subtract instead of add with the quotes to 5. My choices for 24 are 24 and 1, 12 and 2, 8 and 3, and 6 and 4. Big number plus, small number minus. So 24 and negative 1 multiply to negative 24. 12 and negative 2 multiply to negative 24. 8 and negative 3 multiply to negative 24. 6 and negative 4 multiply to negative 24. And now I'm going to find the pair that gives me the 5, and I can see that right there because 8 plus negative 3 is really the same as 8 minus 3. That's 5. So the numbers in my parentheses are going to be a plus 8 and a minus 3. And again, I can flip-flop the order. I probably wouldn't flip-flop the common factor. But the y minus 3 and y plus 8 are interchangeable. 72 and 71 and 73 and 74, they're written in a bad order. I need to have the square term first and the constant term last in order for my factoring to make sense in my head. So I'm going to rewrite 72 with the 2y squared first and the negative 28 last. I need to have the terms going in descending order. The squared term, the first power term, and then the constant term. Now in 72, I'm going to plot a common factor of 2. and I'll be left with y squared plus 5y minus 14. And another one that's so common, the third row of my template, I need plus and minus, big number plus. So I need numbers that multiply to negative 14, and I'm going to say subtract. It's technically add to 5, big number plus. So my choices would be 14 and minus 1 because those multiply to minus 14, and 7 and minus 2, those multiply to 14. The 7 and minus 2 are going to work because 7 plus negative 2 is really the same as 7 minus 2, and that's positive 5. So in my parentheses, after the y's, I get a plus 7 and a minus 2. In either order, the minus 2 can be first and the plus 7 can be second. 73 and 74 are kind of twins that are equally bad. There's a common factor, but I have to rewrite it first with the squared term first, the first power term second, and the constant last. 3, 9, and 54 are all divisible by 3. I'm going to pull out a common factor of a 3. I'd be left with a z squared because 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3z because 9 divided by 3 is 3. And 54 divided by 3 is, 54 divided by 3 is 18. So I'm going to be left with a minus 18. Now I'm going to make this into two parentheses. I need the plus minus numbers that multiply to negative 18 and either quote add or subtract to 3, big number plus, small number minus. My choices would be 18 and negative 1 because those multiply to negative 18. 9 and negative 2, those multiply to negative 18. And 6 and negative 3, those multiply to negative 18. I need the pair that I'll say subtract to be 3 because 6 plus negative 3, that's really 6 minus 3, which is 3. That's the pair I'm going to need. I'm going to leave the common factor of 3, create my two parentheses, split the z's up front, and then do a plus 6 and a minus 3. I can flip-flop that answer, but I'm feeling done. So let's just call this the answer and see what you can do with the rest of these. We're done with this section. Section 1.4 is kind of like the front half of this section where we need to factor by grouping and get the factoring by grouping between the first group of problems down really nicely before you jump into 1.4 to make the transition to 1.4 a lot easier.